up, this is my center of gravity when I'm standing. This has to happen for me to create energy up, okay? So your goal when you're pitching is, how do I get this position to stay together? Watch my center of gravity, and then move. I would be doing the same thing if I'm trying to project when I'm sprinting. That's my goal. You're a human with joints. So yeah, it's not gonna be the same as for every action. There's an equal and opposite reaction because you're not a straight line, but you do have control of where your center of gravity is, and that's important. So when we talk about something as specific as hinge, let's just talk about triangles. That's why I have those educational videos. So when we get into our stance, whatever, okay, the first thing we have to understand is, in order for projection to happen, our torso and our shins have to be in what we'd call an acceleration alignment, sprint alignment, lots of different words for it. We're just gonna call it, just find your triangle. Your triangle exists, first one, back heel, okay, wherever your heel is, and my butt. Notice that's a triangle. This triangle is set. So if I expand this triangle, that means if I push just off this back foot, not even talking about pitching, just talking about expression of energy. If I push off this back foot, number one, there's that triangle. Number two, my head and shoulders, okay, this position right here is the other triangle that's happening, okay? Knee, collarbone right there, okay, right here. That's my other triangle. Now, what I want to happen when I'm talking about that back is, you want to eventually express energy in that direction. Understanding triangles gives us a better opportunity to do that. So, back triangle, set, okay? Now I've got to be sure that my torso aligns with that. It's going to be at the same angle. And notice, when that happens, there's another triangle right here. Now, I'm set. My knee is over top of that transverse arch. My heel is not in, it's outside my big toe. Weight is already primarily on that fourth and fifth. There's our alignment piece. I want that to happen first. So when I'm in that position, okay, I'm here, I have to stay together. I have to keep those triangles together until the moment I create energy into the ground. If I don't do that, what's gonna happen is what we talked about. If we stand up and I squat, okay, if I fold over, squat, then stand up, part of that energy going vertical has to be wasted on picking myself up. That is the same thing so many of us are doing when we do this. You're not directly moving energy this way. You're not. You're creating a position where your hips are taken out of the equation because you're going to pull with your head and shoulders. And you can clearly see that on video. You break apart first. And what I mean by that is, when we rock, this position right here, we pick this heel up, okay? This isn't loading this hip. This is not loading. Why don't I feel my glutes active then? If it were loading the hip, I would feel that. I would feel that tension happen. If I do this, if I just change that, that loads the hip. That loads the hip, and that's what we want to be more aware of. So when we rock, it makes it another it's just something else to think about, when you could just be so simple. If physics tell me for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction, that's just simple Newtonian physics, then my primary goal is, let me get in a position to where all I have to do is, when my brain makes the decision to go, my whole body does it, and I'm already in position to do it, period. Why would I add anything else to that? And then for people like, oh, well, you got to hinge when you pitch. Now you want to talk about hinge, but then you don't even talk about your ankle and your knee. Those are hinge joints. They directly facilitate the hinge that would happen in sprint alignment. But if you're only gonna tell a kid to rock back just so they can hinge, you're wrong, number one. Number two, you're not providing them with the right information to understand why they're not being explosive, why they're not projecting themselves across the rubber. When we should. It's very simple. It's very simple. And we have to understand that. I'm just here. All I have to do from this position, and I'm going. There is no portion, there is nothing within my body, nothing within my body that goes back to go forward. If I'm tensioned correctly, my Achilles is actively loaded, all those things are actively loaded. When I push into the ground, the reaction is for me to bounce out. What I tell my kids all the time, put your foot against the rubber, be sure you're pressing, and so your first check is this. Check your front foot. If you can push yourself forward, if you can from this easily push yourself forward, that's where your foot should be. Now, once I've got that set, now I set my back foot, okay? If I can't do that from my stance, you're not in position to drive the hips forward, period, period. If the knee goes backwards, if that goes backwards when I push, my weight is in my heel. Have you ever seen anyone run with their heel? Have you ever seen anyone do this or jump like that? You don't. You can't. Where the weight is so important. You can have 50-50 weight distribution, but one can be in the heel and the other can be in the midfoot. And you're still gonna end up doing the same things you do regardless if you look like you stand differently. Position is one thing. Position is one thing. The ability to work from that position is a completely other thing. And we can't get one or the other. It has to be both. And that's what I want you to understand. It's that simple. And we can make it so much more simple when we just understand, okay, can I do that? Notice, what do my knees do? Do they go up or do they deepen down? My shin angles get deeper because this is a pelvic driven motion. If I pick my head and shoulders up, did my knees go deeper or did everything go up? This is the motion that most of 90% of kids do, even if they're standing like this. I still took a step, but my whole thought process was just pulling my head and shoulders up. It wasn't engaging my lower half. And that's the difference between understanding what something looks like and having an eye and movement understanding to see and understand that I see lumbar extension happening, I see rib cage flare coming out and those things, or elevation, whatever. I can easily tell the difference when you get to your glutes and you're driving well, or if you're just trying to mimic a picture by pulling your head and shoulders up because no one was clear enough to you to let you know during your motion that that is happening. And then beforehand, give you a drill outside of pinching so you realize that concept and that principle. We cannot exist to do that. We cannot exist to do that. And yes, I'm always going to be a proponent for being sure we use both legs because overall, just think about this. I don't care if you want your kid to be a unicorn and they're throwing gas just using a single leg. They become less functional with the leg they don't use. Meaning, if we have atrophy of glutes, if we have differentiating co-contraction, meaning the hamstring, the calf, and the butt don't know how to work together, you are not going to do anything but increase the force at landing because you're throwing faster and you're accelerating better off one leg, and you're gonna have to absorb that energy with a leg that doesn't even know how to create energy anymore. And I've showed you guys before, do that glute imbalance test. Do it. If there's a significant strength issue in their stride glute, you think that's not gonna be a problem? Your glutes overall absorb impact. Energy is supposed to transfer up your leg to your glutes for them to disperse. That's in most basic CPT books across the board. But you're never gonna get there because you start to walk the way you pitch. You start to walk with this hip hike and this dominant right side, and this glute never gets active. Go to a chiropractor that has the scale that shows that left and right scale. You're gonna find out you weigh more on the side you don't use. So not only doesn't it fire well, but it has to deal with more stress all the time. You think overall in the long run that that's gonna lead to a healthy athlete? Or are we sacrificing things just because they are successful in some metrics? If I have two people and I say this person on this spreadsheet is a billionaire, owns 15 properties, donates millions of dollars to charity yearly, and then I give you this one. This person makes $200,000 a year, donates thousands of dollars, okay? Who do you want to be? Who do you want to be? Most people pick that guy, billionaire. What if I told you that to make those billions, they sold drugs? Do you still want to be that person? But they're successful. If we put it on paper, if we put their record up, if we put their velocity up, if we put all those things up, and that's my point. I'm always going to advocate more for healthy pitching than I am for velocity or any of those things. Because the more you make a movement look like something that doesn't happen anywhere else in motion, the more you're going to get dysfunction. And that's not going to overall be a good thing in the long run. Additionally, when I made that example, I have my feet super close. You can step back if you want. Still the same things are always going to apply. The issue that I tell kids with stepping back is, are you getting to the same positions that create joint angles and joint orientation that's going to project you diagonally and then allow your hips to take over and drive forward? Something I've gone over numerous times. If you are further back, okay, yeah, you're going to be able to drive off that back foot, but understand that the further back this leg is, you have to consider this as well. If I was traditionally a single leg driver and I drove hard off this foot, there is a normal tempo to it. Meaning, because I'm not necessarily worried about my back leg, your front leg and your brain were always in a certain tempo. It took you a certain hundredths of a second to go from pull to push and detachment from the rubber. If this back leg drives hard and you are hip driven with your stride, this leg is gonna swing faster. So you have less time to go through your lower leg sequencing on this leg. So you have to speed up. When your back leg works better, you're gonna have to speed up your front leg to accomplish that. And one of the issues we run into is the further apart we get, just to think that we're gonna drive out, is that not all people are naturally going to understand that if I bang the back leg, I gotta really, really be getting into my explosive position and shin angle in this leg quickly. So some people, they'll bang the back leg, and that's literally how long it takes, and you'll still see the same stair climbing regardless of you being in a deeper position. And that's what confuses people sometimes, is they're like, well, you say all this about joint angles and everything. Well, my daughter is here and she's trying to do that, but she's still ending up at the same position at 3 o'clock. Yeah, it's a good problem, because here's the thing. It's the same thing I've talked about all the time. Whether you're foot driven, meaning your shin swings in your stride leg and you reach, or you're hip driven with your femur, it's like a softball being tied to a rope. If I throw the softball, the rope is going to follow wherever the softball is thrown. So it's the same problem, but for a different reason. One is you're following your hips. The other is you're following your foot. And we'd much rather you follow your foot, and your adjustment is real simple. You got to bang the right leg quicker. You've got to go, if you're going to stand like this, you've got to be able to go quickly. You've got to be able, for the moment your hips initiate that back leg to push. When you see crease to first crease, if you're not doing that between 0.08 and 0.11 hundredths of a second, the further time frame between those two, the more you're gonna get long and look like you're climbing stairs when you're trying to detach from the rubber with the foot that's on the rubber. Because, like I said, this is still moving quickly and you're taking too long to drive off the rubber. Adjustment, very simple. If it takes too long when my legs are that wide, get your legs together. It's not rocket science. So now, and that's why you see me always with my feet stacked together, because it's easy. All I gotta do is change my joint angles. For me, what's the easiest way to change my joint angles? Be compact and go. I can push with both there. I can push with both there. Not a big deal. So if you were back here and you're not banging this front leg quick enough to deal with this, shorten that up. And still the same rules apply. Shin, okay, shin angle, spine, 50% of my weight is still in the transverse arch here, transverse arch there. None of those principles change. None of those things change. You just may even be a little taller from this position. You may even start right here instead. Triangle still exists. Triangle still exists. My butt's not over my heel. None of those things are happening, so we're good. I've just got to fall deeper. That just means that I got to wait a little longer to use both. But the same thing is happening. It's still a foot-driven principle. And that's a mistake we kind of equate to, well, I stood like this and she still went. Well, yeah, well, duh. That's like if I squat more with my left leg or single leg squat more with my left leg and my right leg is 50% weaker, I'm probably going to walk different as well too because it's weaker. Same thing, same concept, same understanding. So understand that aspect as well when it comes to our stance, projection, and those things. We still got to bang both.